Another lie we've been telling ourselves, and you as well, is that we can achieve lasting prosperity through aid. And it's not working. That is not, I'm not making a case against development cooperation. I'm making a case against that mentality, that idea of aid, of a donor and a recipient. Another lie we've been telling ourselves is that our democratic institutions are stable and that we need to be concerned about promoting democracy abroad, but at home we can take it for granted. It's a lie. It's not working. Look at what is happening in the US, look at what is happening across Europe, and we are facing big challenges in Germany as well. And that's not just because democracy is threatened from outside, but it's also failing to perform from within. We've created slow, overburdening bureaucracies that undermine the performance, and the people are beginning to lose trust in the system if it doesn't deliver for them. And we observe that. We've also been lying to ourselves that the kind of welfare that we can give to the people as the nation state is something that can last forever, and that we can always add a bit on top, and that we can strengthen the state and its legitimacy by constantly giving more handouts and providing more social welfare and so on. And it's part of the crisis of democracy as well. If people get used to the state always taking care of you, it's very easy to get into a legitimacy crisis when you can't take care of everyone anymore. So we need to understand that in Germany, in Europe, we have failed to use the peace dividend well. We have failed to use the times of peace and prosperity to prepare for tougher times. Now we are heading into tougher times, and we are at a decisive moment right now. I'm not too pessimistic, because if we are honest to ourselves, we can pull the right strings, we can make the right decisions, we can come out of this crisis stronger than before. Not with that old idea of the West, but maybe with a strong, united Europe with strong partners in the world. Business as usual is over, crisis is the new normal, and the old order will not survive in its current form. And this is where I think it becomes very interesting for Kenya to come in. Because one is, Kenya has shown its commitment to multilateralism and to strengthening and sustaining a rules-based international order, but at the same time, Kenya has been a very strong voice on the need to reform the international order. So this, I think, is an opportunity that we are looking at. In very concrete terms, from the German perspective, what is happening now and what will need to happen under the new incoming government is, one, a massive need for reforms, an actual transformation of our bureaucracy, our welfare, our infrastructure. We need to address the rise of populism, the crisis of democracy. We need to face the demographic challenge. The demographic development in Germany and Europe is quite a contrast to what is happening in Kenya. And we need to gain back our defense capacities. The question of European strength and unity and the future role in the world is one that concerns us a lot. If Europe right now doesn't take the right lessons, doesn't stand together and doesn't stand strong, we will not be a big player in the new international order. And it might not be the kind of order that we would want to see. That also means we will need to seek future alliances, stronger alliances for strategic cooperation and for the protection, but also reform of the rules-based international order. Otherwise, we may be heading into a new era of a new international order that is primarily based on the bully principle. The big players will have their way. They will distribute and demarcate their spheres of influence. The Americans on the one hand, the Chinese on the other hand, maybe the Russians thriving for dominance, even within Europe, taking control of Western Europe. Interestingly, there's a big question mark when it comes to Africa. because it's not so clear who the bully will be on the continent here. I don't know whether that's good or bad news. History would show us it's bad news. Because if the big players use Africa as their battleground, it's the African countries that will suffer the most. And we've seen that in the history as well, in colonialism, in the Cold War era. We'll have a new government in Germany, and I'm eagerly looking forward to that, because the chairman of my party is hopefully going to be the next chancellor of Germany, and he's going to be a good chancellor, and we will hopefully address these challenges in the right way. But it's also not something we can take for granted. You'll follow the news in the coming weeks. It's a bit quiet right now, but it's not a done deal. So we have a tricky situation in Parliament, with the extremists on the left and right having gained votes, and it's very complicated for us to form a government, because we will be leading that government, and everybody is expecting for us to turn things around and push for fundamental change within Germany. But we have to form a coalition with the party that was leading the previous government. So managing that transition with the previous leaders, with the Social Democratic Party that, in my view, is not yet responding honestly to the kind of questions I raised. So we will have to see heading there. But we still have a few days, a few weeks, and I hope the outcome is going to be good. What comes out from the coalition talks so far, and I just want to highlight maybe what is relevant from the Kenyan perspective, are just a handful of things. One is a very clear priority for security and defense. So one thing that the incoming government already did in the outgoing parliament is to have a constitutional change that allows us to go beyond the debt ceilings, beyond the limitations, so that, in theory, we can have endless spending on defense. That's quite a remarkable step for Germany. And that means we are waking up. You don't achieve peace by making yourself weak. Another one is that we will be looking into diversifying trade and supply chains. That was already the case 2 weeks ago, but I think the determination will even be stronger looking at the news, what happened 2 days ago and what Trump announced in the US. A third one, focus on investment rather than aid. Germany will be committed to development cooperation, but the incoming German government will change the modalities of development cooperation. I think that comes with opportunities for Kenya. And also, we will be seeking stronger alliances with non-traditional, but somehow still like-minded partners. And I put Kenya in that category, and I know the German embassy does, and I know the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Germany does. So what I hope to see from the incoming German government when it comes to international cooperation is a more strategic, a more interest-based, and yes, also a more transactional approach to international partnerships. And that's an immense opportunity for Kenya. But if we now look at the Kenyan angle, and you will know much better than me, that's why I'll just tickle you a bit. But the Kenyan perspective on what is happening in the world, yes, it will come with immense challenges. That global economic recession that we'll be heading into now is going to hit you hard. The tariffs are going to hit you hard, and the possible domino effect of that will hit you hard. And we all know that what the markets and investors hate the most is uncertainty. And as long as we have that president in the US, and the US continuing to play a dominant role, we will have uncertainty. I think the one thing that is certain with Trump is uncertainty. Aid funding is going down. We've all talked about the impact of US aid being stopped and pulling out, and the implications for employment in Kenya and so on. And there is more push in that direction. We know where the UK is heading with development cooperation. We've heard the announcements in the Netherlands. Germany will stay committed to development cooperation, but the modalities will change. But it might be an opportunity in the long run, but in the short term, it's going to hurt. And if we are very pessimistic, we might even have a crisis of the UN system. If countries invest more in their national defense and decide to invest less in multilateral institutions, because the idea of multilateralism is even being discredited left, right, and center, UN agencies will struggle. I don't have to tell you what it would mean for Kenya if the agencies that are based here in Nairobi have to significantly reduce their spending and let go of thousands of staff. But it's a scenario that we have to be aware of. And also we are aware of the instability here in the region. And that instability will be hard to contain, and it might become harder to contain. Because the global economic situation and the challenges arising from that might further fuel conflicts and might lead to more instability, and international partners being busy with enhancing their own defense capacities and dealing with their own crisis in their immediate neighborhoods might mean that you'll have a harder time getting support for the stabilizing force that Kenya is here in the region. And clearly put, Kenya itself has the same challenge. You cannot have prosperity without stability. You cannot have stability without prosperity. And addressing both at the same time, addressing the economic challenges, addressing the challenges of the young population, and maintaining stability and making sure that the grievances are out there don't translate into riotism or violence, I think is an immense challenge. But I want to close by talking about the opportunities. So I mentioned development cooperation a few times now. Those changing modalities will be better for countries like Kenya in the long run. In fact, we have been lobbying for that. Before I came to Kenya, I was based in Berlin for 4 years. We worked with the CDU party very closely when they were in opposition. Now they will be back in government. But obviously, when your party is in opposition, that's the time you use for groundwork to make the politicians understand how things need to be done differently. When they don't rely on the ministerial bureaucracies and all the experts in government, they'll come looking for your advice in your political foundation. That's what we've been doing, and we've been lobbying for that. I don't even have a problem with Germany not having a Ministry for Development Cooperation anymore. We can do it under Foreign Affairs. If it saves us money on the bureaucracy, fine. The commitment to development cooperation and maybe even enhanced spending on development cooperation needs to be there, but not with the logic of aid. Not with a donor-recipient relationship, but with partners in business, with partners in security, with partners who sit together, agree on where you can work together on clearly spelled out interests, and work on a win-win situation. So, and Kenya is ready for that. I think there are very few developing countries, if we even want to use that term, who are as ready for that as Kenya. With the logic of interest-based cooperation, with the logic of investment for prosperity. I also do think, and I got a bit encouraged, we had our Ministry of Defense with a large delegation here this week. I also had a dinner with a delegation, and there is very, very strong interest in reorienting also Germany's security engagement in different regions in the world. And East Africa and the Horn of Africa is one area where they are aware that engagement needs to be stronger. And the PCS, we talked about it the other week. We will continue lobbying for that. The ministry indicated that their doors are open. We will continue lobbying for more German and European support for dealing with the crisis here in the region, and we know who has the lead role to play. Kenya is the anchor for stability in the region here. So I think that is an immense opportunity. The fact that Kenya has established itself as a strong voice for multilateralism. The commitment is strong, and it's not just the rhetorics of your president, it's also shown in action. You can take the Haiti mission and many other examples where Kenya has shown, or take it when it comes to climate diplomacy, but Kenya has not just shown its commitment to seeking multilateral solutions by rhetorics, but actually by action. And as the world changes and we're looking at a reshaping international order, let's take up that opportunity. And the architects of the new international order will not just sit in Washington, Berlin, Paris, whatever. That's going to be, and it has to be, an inclusive international engagement. And I think Kenya on the African continent will play a lead role when it comes to that. Kenya has also been very progressive on the trade aspect. I mean, just take the example of the EPA and how Kenya is bolder and moving faster than other countries in the region, and that will be the way to go. As the US decide to pull out, I mean, Donald Trump basically announced that the US doesn't want globalization anymore. That is it. You close your borders, you produce everything at home, and you're on your own, you can take care of yourself. That's the long-term vision they have. The rest of the world doesn't have that. China doesn't have that vision, Europe doesn't have that vision, Kenya doesn't have that vision. So what are we going to make? How do we turn that crisis into an opportunity for creating more investment connections, for having more free trade for the sake of prosperity? Lastly, you have a very young, well-educated, resilient population, far more resilient than the German population. In Germany now we have young people entering talk shows left, right and center talking about how they would rather surrender to the Russians now than ever picking up a gun to fight. Ask Kenyans the same, and the answer will be fundamentally different. That's a big plus. And in fact, you still have young people. We don't have many young people in Germany anyway. We're an aging society. Rosalind, you're laughing. We will turn that into an opportunity as well. So here's an example. Tomorrow I'll be on a plane with a delegation from East Africa, including colleagues from the diaspora docket, and we will talk about labor migration and the opportunities there. And we know that the incoming government will be as committed to pursuing that as the current government. So these are a few things I just wanted to throw at you. And I hope it can tickle your brain a bit. One thing that we need is honesty. I can be more honest than our ambassador because I'm not a diplomat. But you need, and that's just my appeal, push the Germans, push the Europeans, force them to be honest, to sit down and have an eye-to-eye dialogue. The ball is in your court. The Germans, the Europeans are the ones who need to panic a lot more about the current situation than you do. The opportunities are on your side. So as you sit at the table, articulate your interests clearly, but force the German side to also spell out very clearly what is your interest, what's in it for us, what's in it for you. Let's not beat around the bush. Nobody's doing anything out of altruism, so let's identify where can our interests come together, where can we achieve something together. Ultimately, we do all that based on an understanding that we share values, and not because we've been traveling around preaching about how we do things back at home, but a shared understanding of how an international order needs to look like, where countries like Kenya and Germany can thrive. And we want stability. And sorry, now I'm going to do something, also because I'm not a diplomat, I'll leave you with one warning. There are players out there that share an interest in stability. There are players out there that do the opposite, that thrive on instability. I am not so sure about the US under Trump, but we can't rule out that part of their agenda is to trigger more instability for their own advantage. The Europeans struggle with the competition from China. And we have a very tricky attitude and a very tricky relationship. Now we might be forced to move closer to China again because of Trump. But there's one thing in common we have with the Chinese, that's the interest in stability. China is interested in stability in partnering countries where you can invest, where you can trade. I mentioned the three potential bullies out there. Russia is another one. I have question marks about Trump and the US. I am pretty sure about the Chinese and their interest in stability. I'm pretty sure about the Russians and their interest in instability. Make no mistake, Russia thrives on instability. Russia doesn't have the economic power to be an attractive partner and to come in with massive investment. Where Russia can play a role is where there's instability. Because what they do have is mercenary, is weapons, is military force, and not caring so much about people suffering. I'm sorry to say that. You can beat me for that and say, well, you are the biased German, you just have an issue with Russia that we don't have, but I wanted to throw that out here, because my role today, this morning, I understood it to be one of just provoking you a bit and tickling your minds a bit. I hope that I did that successfully. Thank you for having me. I hope I didn't speak way too long, but I wish you all very, very fruitful deliberations. We are extremely happy to be partnering with you, but also, as I said, this is your process. We are not going to meddle in those affairs, so don't be surprised if I'm out of here pretty soon after the formal opening. Thank you so much.
Let's put our hands together again for Matthias. Come. I think you haven't really tickled our minds. I think you have a bit shocked it. And those of us who are not awake this morning, I think, are wide awake, given the rather sobering view, of the international environment that we live within. And so we want to thank you very much. Thank you for your candor. Thank you as well for your advice. I would love to continue this conversation with you bilaterally, but again, thank you. Your Excellency, it's my pleasure now to welcome my sister, Dr. Aurelia Rono, just to make a few observations. I was generous with Matthias in terms of the length of time we allowed him to speak, and I think it has been quite an edifying session, but with regard to the rest of us, I'll be a bit tight. So you have 5 minutes max. Thank you.
Thank you, Piers. Your Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations, the Honorable Vice Chairperson, the Honorable members of the committee, my colleague Piers, Dr. Singoe, Piers, Roslyn, representative from the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, parliamentary staff who are present here today, invited guests and speakers. Good morning. Yeah, it gives me great pleasure to join you today during this important and timely retreat to deliberate on this critical legal instrument that is the Kenya Foreign Policy 2024. Honorable Chairperson, let me begin by expressing my deep gratitude to you and your committee and the entire House of Legislation at large for the exemplary support you've continued to offer our State Department for Parliamentary Affairs and consequently the entire executive arm of government. Your Excellency, honorable members, allow me to laud the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs under the able leadership of the Prime Cabinet Secretary for the novelty deployed in the development of the Kenya Foreign Policy 2024 that was transmitted to Parliament and is now before you as a sessional paper number 1 of 2025. The formulation of this policy marks a great milestone in providing a clear roadmap for diplomatic relations that appreciates the dynamics of globalization and technological advancement while protecting our national interest. Honorable Chairperson, as the State Department mandated with the facilitating MDAs in upholding international best practices and the prescribed constitutional processes in policy formulation, I'm delighted to report that the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs in developing this policy involved the State Department for Parliamentary Affairs from the initial stages of policy initiation, and hence the policy fully adheres to the recently launched Public Policy Handbook for Kenya 2024. I'm further aware, Your Excellency and honorable members, of the extensive stakeholder engagement that was undertaken. The intent was not only to meet the constitutional dictates, but also to incorporate as much opinion as was received. Thus, this very elaborate and well set out sessional paper was realized in the form and structure before us today. My State Department reaffirms its commitment in supporting the other remaining legislative initiatives within the ministry, including the diaspora bill that is being developed by Diaspora State Department. Honorable Chairperson and committee members, allow me to use this golden opportunity to give a glimpse of our role in enhancing the quality of the national government legislative agenda. The State Department, as you are aware, was established by the Fifth Administration in realization of the central place of legislation in supporting the timely achievement of national government agenda. It is imperative to note that the successful implementation of government programs must be anchored on sound policy and legal framework. Consequently, then, we play a pivotal role in coordinating parliamentary liaison services across MDAs through fostering seamless interactions between the executive and parliament, ensuring the effective and harmonious handling of government business within the legislature. In light of the above, the State Department has developed tools to enhance interactions between the executive and the legislature, besides promoting the quality legislation and policy formulation process. The following materials developed have proven to be resourceful to our stakeholders, who include members of parliament. One is the Public Policy Handbook for Kenya. Two is the Guidelines for the Development of National Government Policy and Legislation. Three is the Government Legislative Agenda Schedule, which is a critical framework that carries all the policy initiatives and legislative initiatives that we do as executive. Your Excellency, honorable members, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the integration of technology into the legislative process is no longer an option, but a necessity. As the official repository of government legislative agenda, we have embarked on automating our services in line with the presidential directive to go paperless. I'm delighted this morning to report that we have successfully onboarded our legislative tracking procedures to a real-time digital platform known as LATIS, that is the Legislative Agenda Tracking Information System. We are aware that Parliament has a tracking system for their legislative initiatives, and that is what we are working on across the executive, to also have a tracking system of the initiatives that we have. This tool will be critical in tracking and coordinating the legislative and policy development within the executive. The same is currently under piloting, with capacity building having been undertaken across a number of MDAs. The efficiency in LATIS introduces will enhance our collaborative and whole-of-government approach as we deliver on the government legislative agenda. Honorable Chairperson and members, we acknowledge with great appreciation the strides made in accommodating the executive in parliamentary processes. The amendment of standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to answer questions before the whole House has augmented accountability and transparency. In conclusion, I wish to commend the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs for subjecting this policy to parliamentary consideration, as it is envisaged that the views from the House will enrich the document and make it citizen-centric. The enactment and implementation of the new policy will position Kenya as a proactive and influential player in international relations. committed to leveraging diplomacy for national process and global prosperity. We look forward, honorable members, to having more of such engagements with your committee and the other organs of parliament, as this will enhance our whole-of-government approach, which is the hallmark of effective collaboration among government institutions. I wish the retreat a fruitful deliberations and progressive outcomes. Thank you so much.
Another round of applause from my dear sister Aurelia. Thank you. It's now my pleasure, before I invite my sister Roslyn Njogu, to just bring to our attention that we've been joined online by a couple of ambassadors, particularly our ambassadors from our multilateral stations. But of particular importance is Ambassador Kiptines in Bangkok, who's been dealing with a lot of issues touching on the diaspora in that East Asia region. And so I think that provides a bit of background as we invite PS Roslyn Njogu to share her thoughts. Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for her.
Thank you, my brother PS Sing'oei, His Excellency PCS and Waziri wa Maswala ya Ughaibuni na Maswala ya Nchi za Nje, Honorable Nelson Koech, Chair of our committee, my brother PS Sing'oei, my sister PS Aurelia, Herr Matthias Kamp, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, colleagues, and members of parliament of this esteemed committee, ambassadors here in the room, joining us online, colleagues from the ministry and from government. Good morning. Good morning. I know I have an opportunity to speak in detail in an upcoming session, so I'm going to make my comments very, very brief. Also because I've been threatened by Sing'oei under his breath while he was smiling over here. He was uttering threats. I kid. Waziri, I want to thank you for your leadership of the ministry, but specifically today for your leadership in pushing this foreign policy conversation to a sessional paper. It was your dream, and I think we are at that point now where we are having a national dialogue on matters foreign policy. I want to thank you for that. And for the heavy lifting that has been done by my brother PS Sing'oei and PS Aurelia in bringing together our ministry and Bunge, and for the partnership, of course, of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. This sessional paper is an important opportunity for national dialogue on foreign policy. Very often, I think, we are all asked, but what does this ministry do? How can we touch and feel the work of this ministry? It doesn't build roads, it doesn't build bridges, it doesn't educate children. Can you give us some things to touch and feel? I think that question has been asked another way. Why does a president travel so much? What does he bring when he travels? It has been a feeling of mine for a while now in the 2.5 years, 2.25 years that I've been in this ministry, that all our policies, including the foreign policy, needs to take a decisively people-first approach. It must always be about the people. This sessional paper gives us an opportunity to do just that, to submit the work, the policies, and our ideas around what we do to a national conversation in Bunge and with citizens of this country to ask themselves these questions about what we do. I would like to propose that diaspora diplomacy is a key touch point for making a foreign policy a people-first document. Diaspora diplomacy allows us to touch and feel people. For people to touch and feel diplomacy, for people to touch and feel the work that this ministry does. Our diaspora now is 4 million strong. 4 million people around the world is bigger than the population of Nairobi during the day. It is an army out there. And we are entering a new era of diaspora diplomacy, where we are seeing increasingly the diaspora playing a critical role in business, in economics, in development. Diaspora remittances, for example, have now outstripped not just other sources of forex, which are your usual coffee, tea, horticulture, tourism, but also foreign aid. And that's an important thing to flag, particularly following Matthias's conversation about aid and where that direction is going. So this sessional paper allows us, or gives us an opportunity to think about how the diaspora can be a decolonizing force and how the diaspora can play a critical role in decolonizing countries and in funding countries. But we've also entered an era where we're increasingly seeing our diaspora taking up political leadership in other countries. What does that mean for us in terms of diaspora diplomacy? How can we extend our own reach in these places? But as that has grown, we've also seen a growth of diaspora in crisis. We've seen, with the growth of Kenyans in political spaces, in business, in economics, we've also seen a growth in crisis because we've also seen a growth of labor mobility, labor migration, sometimes to places that are, haven't been very safe or haven't been very welcoming to Kenyans. And therefore, as a people, we need to have a structured response to that crisis, to that portion of our population that is on the move and that is in crisis. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to a deeper conversation then today and eventually in Bunge on how, as a nation and through this sessional paper, do we protect, engage, and empower and prosper Kenyans in this space. Asanteni sana. Thank you, PS.
Thank you very much. Thought-provoking views again by my sister Rosaline, and I think her articulation of this process or diaspora diplomacy as enabling people first diplomacy, I think, is one that we must reflect upon. I was going to argue that our policy now is Africa first policy. And so I think from the top, we're talking Africa first, but from the bottom, I think it's people first. And I think it's a very powerful approach. Your Excellency, allow me now to invite the Chair of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee in Parliament, the Honorable Nelson Koech. Thank you. Let's put our hands together kindly.
Thank you, Dr. PCS, Dr. Singoe, OPS, Dr. Njogu, and Dr. Aurelia Rono, the entire Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our Conrad Director Matthias, entire Ministry of Foreign Affairs, our friends who are here today for this important retreat. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I will be extremely brief because, and I don't know if we missed something we should have done introduction, because these colleagues will not be very fair with me if I do not allow them to do an introduction. And since anyway I will not have an opening remark, our opening remarks have been overtaken by events, it looks like, because Kemp, the director of Conrad, has had a very, actually delved deep into the agenda of today's meeting, that if we were to go back to opening remarks again, it looks like we will be reintroducing something that it's way past where it should have been. But very thoughtful of you, particularly on the mention of focus on investment rather than aid. Then the question is, so as we look at this foreign policy, should we then also, in the same breath, relook at our traditional funding partners to probably realign to where probably the East or the Middle East, and I've seen many countries that are looking at that. I think it's probably a debate that we will have. But PCS, just to bring to your attention, this team has had a very, very robust engagement on this document of foreign policy. They have been very insightful on comments, and some of them have been, we will listen to them later, very, very constructive, particularly from the lawyers that are in the committee and former diplomats like Honorable Yusuf. he has reservations on some of the issues. I'm sure he'll highlight them. The report that we got from when we went for public participation, that we, as a committee, we looked at it this week on Tuesday, on Tuesday, and very, very interesting comments from people out there. So very quickly, members, let's introduce ourselves. I'll start with my Vice Chair, Honorable Bashir.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Major Bashir Abdullahi, the Vice Chair of the Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee and a Member of Parliament for Mandera North.
A very good morning. I'm Irene Kasalu, MP Kitui County and member of this committee.
Good morning. My name is Memusi Kanchori, MP Kajiado Central.
Good morning. My name is Yusuf Hassan. I'm the MP for Kamkunji and a senior ranking member of this committee.
Good morning. My name is Freddy Kana, Member of Parliament, Shinyalo constituency, and a future senior ranking member of the committee.
Morning, I'm Moses Krima, MP Central Imenti, and a member of the committee.
Honorable Wangara stepped out, but she'll be joining us. Honorable Millie Odhiambo has sent her apologies. She's out of the country. Honorable Kandia is here. I think he's just stepped out also. Honorable Sloya, a Member of Parliament from the PCS backyard, has been unwell for some time. We pray for his quick recovery, but we will also be briefing him on what the outcome of this meeting. So, like I said, I omitted a very huge section of my opening remarks. But as a Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly, we recognize the dynamic and evolving nature of the international relations. Kenya's foreign policy has long been anchored on the pillars of peace, diplomacy, economic diplomacy, diaspora diplomacy, environmental diplomacy, and cultural diplomacy. These principles have guided our engagement with regional and international partners, ensuring that Kenya remains a key player in the global affairs. However, as we look forward into the future, it is imperative that we assess the effectiveness of our diplomatic engagement and identify areas that require reinforcement of our diplomatic engagement and identify the areas that require reinforcement or realignment. This briefing, therefore, Honorable PCS, provides us with an opportunity to deepen our understanding of the objectives and implementation strategies outlined in Sessional Paper number 1 of 2025. The only areas that we probably want to look at is, as we engage today, let me emphasize on some very critical areas that I think warrant our attention. And number 1 is Kenya's economic aspiration, demand a foreign policy that supports trade expansion, foreign investment, and market diversification. How do we then leverage a global economic framework such as African Continental Free Trade Area to boost Kenya's economic growth and international trade relations? That's number 1. Number 2, Kenya continues to play a vital role in promoting peace and security within the region. Our diplomatic engagement in Southern Sudan, Somalia, and Great Lakes regions have been significant. How can we further enhance our contribution to conflict resolution? This will continue being providing peacekeeping, yet we have our own challenges as a country. Should we focus on our country and forget about continuing with peacekeeping? So those are some of the engagements. And in public participation, I don't know if it was Kenya National Human Rights. They actually had a concern on our continued mission, continued as a country, our continued efforts in peacekeeping, because they argue that we still find that in the budget, for instance, you want to spend about 5 billion in this financial year to send our officers to Somali for transition forces, AWSOM. But yet, we have our challenges as a country. So should we review that and refocus on the country? Those are some of the things that were raised in public participation. The Kenyan diaspora is critical economic and social asset to our nation. Their remittances, Madam Jogo, investments and knowledge transfer have far-reaching impacts. What strategies can we adopt to strengthen diaspora engagement and support their integration into the national development efforts? I have 2 more to go. Climate change, I can see Dr. Singoye. Climate change is an existential challenge that demands global cooperation. Yesterday, this committee, a few members, have been with the National Intelligence Service, the Mashariki Conference. Very, very engaging. Global and the issues of climate change have come in as a security threat. It's not just any other issue of climate anymore. It's become more of an international security threat. So Kenya, as a host of the United Nations Environmental Programme, has positioned itself as a leader in environment conservation. How do we enhance then our international partnership and climate diplomacy to attract greater investments in green energy and sustainable initiatives? And finally, Your Excellency, Kenya is actively involved and engaged in multilateral organizations such as the East African Union and the United Nations, the East African Community and the Commonwealth. How can we optimize our diplomatic strategy to ensure that our participation in these bodies yield tangible benefits to our national interests? So, ladies and gentlemen, let us take this opportunity to engage constructively, ask pertinent questions, and provide policy recommendations that will strengthen our diplomatic engagements globally. With those very few remarks, I look forward to a very enlightening and fruitful engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your guidance, Honorable Koech. It is now my distinct honor and pleasure to request His Excellency Musalia Mudavadi to come and give his remarks, which remarks I believe will truly highlight the significance of this process. So let's kindly put our hands together, and if you may maybe be upstanding as the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Foreign Minister of the Republic engages us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think it's not for you to stand, but to stretch. If you can do a bit of exercise. I'll excuse my brother, MP for Kamukunji, because he's an elder. He doesn't have to stand. But thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'll try and make this very brief because there's a lot of what would I say? A lot of brains itching to share their reactions and knowledge based on the very provocative statements we have had. The Honorable Nelson Koech, Chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations, the honorable members of the committee present here today, principal secretaries, our colleagues also from Defense. Let me also acknowledge our partner, Matthias Kamp, representing the Conrad Group, and all Kenyans present, so that we can move a step higher, further, in realizing this very important objective. So let me try, Mr. Chairman, to just make some formal remarks, and then at the end, I'll just make some brief recaps. I am delighted to see you all today as we begin our deliberations on the sessional paper number 1 of 2025 on the foreign policy of the Republic of Kenya. This retreat provides a platform for the executive and legislative arms of the government to engage on the proposals in the sessional paper and the feedback received from the public to enable us make practical recommendations for shaping Kenya's foreign policy. The sessional paper, which was developed after the launch of the Kenya Foreign Policy 2024 in December last year, is a strategy document presented for parliamentary scrutiny and debate to allow for refinement of the policies it proposes before they are implemented. And I'll repeat that. It is a strategy document presented for parliamentary scrutiny and debate to allow for refinement of the policies it proposes before they are implemented. As a ministry, we have fully embraced the principles of public participation and even gone a notch higher to engage members of parliament who are the people's representatives. Let me take this opportunity to appreciate the National Assembly for further extending the arc of public participation by availing and subjecting the sessional paper to public scrutiny. You will note from the top page of the sessional paper a Kiswahili theme, Sera ya Kenya ya uhusiano wa nje na nchini hadi mashinani. The objective is to emphasize the new foreign policy approach that aims to involve our citizens right from the grassroots to the international sphere. This is the essence of our new policy direction, embodied in the expression Foreign and Diaspora Policy Mashinani, that solidifies the national ownership of our foreign policy even as we position Kenya internationally. The sessional paper provides a framework for policy development and implementation. It presents several requests for consideration by Parliament that are critical to the conduct of Kenya's foreign policy. This encompasses diaspora issues that are highlighted in the Kenya Foreign Policy 2024 and operationalized by the recently launched Kenya Diaspora Policy 2024. The Principal Secretaries for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs will speak to these issues in greater detail during the next session. The overarching request is for Parliament to consider, approve, and adopt the contents and recommendations of the sessional paper. At the core of these requests is the goal of promoting a holistic approach to financing our foreign policy implementation, maximize effective utilization of Kenya's assets abroad, and bolster the foreign service staff through improved terms of service and a structured process of professional recruitment and deployment. As the founding document of the sessional paper, the Kenya Foreign Policy 2024 provides a comprehensive framework for conducting the country's foreign relations and diplomatic engagement. It aims to promote and safeguard our national interests and enhance the country's global standing. Indeed, as the theme of the sessional paper suggests, this is a grand strategy for positioning our foreign policy in the ever-evolving global landscape. This is why you have noted that instead of dwelling so much on pillars, we now have focus areas to reflect the adaptability of our foreign policy to the rapidly mutating global system. We have to be prepared for the emerging geopolitical transformation, which is creating serious challenges, including a new scramble for Africa and subsequent resurgence of the Cold War. The unfolding world order is that of multipolarity and unipolarity, unilateralism rather than multilateralism, protectionism rather than free trade, and growing indifference and transactional conduct rather than humanitarianism. The outcome is that states are largely taking to the realism world of viciously pursuing selfish interests and getting more inward looking. To continue adapting and successfully navigating this evolving global landscape, we have to be strategic and ambiguous in ring-fencing our interests and projecting Kenya's position on matters of geopolitical significance. In this regard, the sessional paper makes a bold assertion of the Kenya country position on strategic foreign policy issues, including a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, Pacific resolution of the Ukraine-Russia crisis, and the One China policy. The objective is to authoritatively articulate, defend, and advance Kenya's national interests in the complex and ever-changing global arena. It will further advance Kenya's ability and resolve to deploy policy actions that protect and promote the interests and welfare of our citizens, wherever they are in the diaspora. Finally, we look forward to open and interactive discussions. This will enable us to deliver a final document that comprehensively addresses all perspectives of our national interests and Kenya's transformative journey in the emerging world order. And Mr. Chairman, your committee is so pivotal in this regard. So I've finished those formal statements, but first let me just thank Matthias, first of all for the support you have lent us or extended to us in terms of the process that has brought us to where we are, but also for being very candid. When he came to see me and we had a chat, I told him, look, what you're saying is so critical. It cannot be for my ears only. I think have an opportunity, and I'm happy you did that. In fact, you may have adjusted your departure to travel out of the country so that you can be with us to make your statement. I can indicate that I think I was also shocked into reality. And I'm sure my colleagues will appreciate that those were very thought-provoking comments. It's a serious wake-up call as we deliberate on these matters before us. On a lighter note, Conrad was working very closely with the ANC party when we were in the opposition. And we developed a very good working relationship. Now they are a party in government, and the majority of you, we have the Kenya Kwanza government, so they have to look at things now from a different prism. And that partnership that we had when we were both in opposition, I'm happy he's willing now to extend it because he's now wearing the shoe of government as well. As we move forward. A few things that we will hope for is that once the committee has put everything together, the final document, we definitely look forward to the robust debate in Parliament and the endorsement of this sessional paper. So that we can now move forward with more clarity and avoid guesswork on critical matters of our foreign policy. So I'm really appealing to you to help us drive this. And remember, it is the sessional paper number 1 of 2025. So you and I, plus my team at the ministry, are in partnership to deliver sessional paper number 1 of 2025 to the Kenyan people. the sessional paper has been approved by Cabinet. The first position was that Cabinet approved the policy. After the conversation, then Cabinet approved the sessional paper. But it is clear that Cabinet was approving the sessional paper because they knew very well that Parliament is the pillar and the anchor, and parliamentary input on our foreign policy is going to be extremely critical, because this is a thing that we have not been pursuing aggressively. We want to change that course and make sure that Parliament is deep into the whole process of helping us direct our foreign policy. It will make it easier to deal with budgetary issues. It will make it easier to deal with very many other challenges that arise. In this policy, critical and sessional paper, Cabinet did approve that you now need to look at the foreign policy, as you have always advocated, the foreign aspect of it, pillar, if I may call it that way, as a security-related function. So Cabinet approved that position. And you as Parliament, you had always raised this as well. So this is an opportunity for us to put it on the table beyond any reasonable doubt that that is where it lies, and going into the future, that should be the way to look at it. We want you to help us unlock the potential of our international assets. Other countries are reaping very serious dividends from their international assets, while we are not doing the same. And in fact, in some instances, we have even run away from occupying our own assets because we have not been maintaining them. So this is an opportunity for the defense, for the committee to help us deal with that. We have issues to talk to, and I'm happy that defense team is also here. You raised a very fundamental question about peacekeeping and all that. This was one of the flagships of Kenya in the context of leadership on the continent. We have suffered a setback, and I think in the committee you will get the rankings. We are now about number 30-something in that realm globally in terms of peacekeeping. And countries, and there's no harm in mentioning this from a positive perspective, but countries like Rwanda have risen to become number 4 globally in terms of peacekeeping efforts, while Kenya has completely disappeared from the radar on this matter. So it is something that we need to interrogate quite effectively. We need to promote trade. We need to promote investment. It has been said, and nobody is blinking. The people in Washington are not blinking anymore. They are telling you openly that we are coming for this or that. So let us also come to the stark reality that we have to change our approach. We have to combat issues that are negative, corruption, money laundering, vices that undermine stabilities of nations. I think we need to pronounce ourselves very clearly on some of these things, so that as we move forward, we need to understand what kind of policies. Last night I came from Rwanda. I was representing the president, and the issue was the topic of the fourth revolution, basically artificial intelligence. Globally, what is it going to do? What is going to be the impact in our societies? And some of the big players made announcements that in Africa they want to have 5 centers that will be the key global hubs, the GPU hubs: South Africa, Kenya, Morocco, Egypt, and I think Nigeria. So Kenya is one of them, targeted to become a central nation in this new era around artificial intelligence and what it portends. So we need to prime ourselves and set ourselves into good stead. The war on tariffs is so clear. But even as we wake up every morning looking at what the Americans have said on tariffs, it also gives us an opportunity to say that what about in the continent? To what extent are we ourselves, even within our own continent, dealing with trade barriers, whether they are tariff or non-tariff barriers? These are issues that we may want to look at. On multilateralism, perhaps as I sit now, beginning to have less faith. Open. What international bodies current on their subscriptions, but the level of interest within is beginning to wane. If you see a challenge in that area, then let us rethink and realize that approach. So, ladies and gentlemen, the board thought, let's speak, and I'm sure we are to have an enriched document, and hopefully it will be on the floor of the House. So that, because then it will also guide future budgeting for the same functions. Asante sana, Mungu awabariki, na tufanye kazi pamoja. Thank you.
With that eloquent, with that very pointed and eloquent speech by the Prime Cabinet Secretary, we come to the end of the opening session. I wish to convey my deep appreciation to him for his leadership, his thoughtfulness, and his guidance that has enabled us to shepherd this document to where it is at the present. Allow me then to propose that we will recess for a very brief break on account of the fact that we are running behind schedule. We will take 15 minutes instead of half an hour break so that we can come back and delve even deeper on the issues that are before us. With your permission, Your Excellency, I think we will take that break. It is my understanding